Things could get a little bit embarrassing for the former president, not just when it comes to revelations about his private life, but also revelations as to how he ran his presidential campaign and how he ran his business.
We've become a bit blasé about Donald Trump's endless court battles. Well, his latest court appearance was significant enough to break through our feelings of same old, same old. The former and perhaps future president of the United States appeared in court in New York to hear opening arguments in his criminal trial, the first time that's ever happened to a president. Prosecutors said he committed election fraud, pure and simple. Philip Crowther is AP's international correspondent. He was in court.
Well, it was a very short day in court, actually, just a few hours because of the Passover holiday, but it did give us the time to hear those two opening statements. First of all, from the prosecutors and then from Donald Trump's defense team. And essentially what it gave us is the roadmaps, if you will, from the two sides as to how they're going to describe what Donald Trump did or did not to do. From the prosecutors, a very clear tale of a man who not only falsified documents in their view, but did so with the clear goal to illegally influence the 2016 presidential election. Now, Donald Trump's defense team says, first of all, that hush money payments are not illegal. That is true. That influencing an election is not illegal either. They're right there too. But the combination of those two, they will have to convince those 12 members of the jury that that was something that was not illegal. It's going to be a fascinating up to 2 weeks probably of this trial altogether.
And presumably the prosecution, by pitching it as hard as this, is trying to sort of either subconsciously or consciously link it to other concerns that exist about Donald Trump. He doesn't respect the electoral process. The January 6th thing that followed 4 years later, they're trying to paint a picture. Presumably, when I read the statement, it felt like they're trying to say, this is not someone just a bit embarrassed about an affair. This is someone who doesn't respect the sanctity of an election.
Yeah, and they're trying to make it clear that he did so consciously because, again, there is that difference of views from the two sides. The prosecution believes that he did this willfully, that it was part of a conspiracy to corrupt the election. The defense, though, Donald Trump's lawyers, they say that, first of all, he didn't really know he was involved in any kind of election interference, that these were deals made by his lawyer, his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, who will be a witness as well, and that Donald Trump wasn't all that involved. So that is really something that we saw from the prosecution, was to paint a picture of a former president, or in this case, somebody who was running for the presidency, who was somebody who was willing to interfere in the electoral process. Now, the prosecutors did not talk about the other criminal cases, but they are still trying to paint a picture that is much more dangerous to the former president than just somebody who was willing to falsify records.
My favourite detail in the case is the fact that the former publisher of the National Enquirer is called David Pecker. And he's kind of a figure in this because the prosecution's case is that he's sat down with Trump and regularly looked at stories to buy and therefore bury.
Yeah, it's a catch and kill scheme, as it is called. Essentially, what the publisher of the National Enquirer, this is a tabloid full of scandalous stories, many of them false here in the United States. What he is alleged to have done is to have sat down not just with Donald Trump, but also with his former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, and came up with this idea that he was willing to essentially pay for stories to go away that otherwise he might publish. Essentially a big deal made with the very conscious effort and the very conscious goal of getting Donald Trump elected and not having negative stories about his private life having an influence on his chances of being elected. A mastermind of sorts is how the prosecution is painting Donald Trump and his lawyer and the publisher of the National Enquirer as well. Again, the defense says that essentially nobody really knew what they were doing.
That's an interesting defense. You mentioned this is all about electability. What this boils down to, I suppose, Philip, is he may well be found guilty. He probably won't go to prison, and a large number of people in America will vote for him nonetheless. I guess the question will be, is there enough in this to put off enough people that it ruins his chances of election? That's the $1 million question that no one fully understands the answer to yet, do they?
No, and that is something that the former president is saying pretty much twice a day, essentially, because he speaks to the cameras when he enters the courtroom in the hallway outside the courtroom, and he speaks to them usually again when he exits the courtroom. He essentially says that this is a political case, that the whole goal of this is to hurt his chances of becoming president again, and that this is all orchestrated by the Biden administration. This is Donald Trump's point of view. Now, I don't know whether necessarily this case itself and a possible guilty verdict would have that really damaging impact on Donald Trump's campaign. There is something else that might hurt him more, and that is that we're looking at up to 2 months of this criminal case going on in this lower Manhattan courthouse. Witness testimony, including from former porn star Stormy Daniels, about Donald Trump's private life. She says she had sex with Donald Trump. He says there was never a relationship. There might be some details that could be revealed in court for not all of us to see or hear because there are no cameras in the courtroom, but those sentences will still come to light. So things could get a little bit embarrassing for the former president, not just when it comes to revelations about his private life, but also revelations as to how he ran his presidential campaign and how he ran his business.
There we go. There's a very good sketch of all that's been going on in the Times. Well worth reading. The case of the president, the porn star, and a man called David Pecker.